On this video, I'm gonna continue on from where I left off. I'm in reading Waldo Emerson's book. This essay is on politics. Please share your thoughts, your comments, your feedback. Before I carry on, before I continue, I want to just thank all those of you who have shared your beautiful comments, your thoughts, your feedback. It's much appreciated. I look forward to hearing from you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. That way we could get this book out further to a greater audience. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join me in the reading and this exercise. We must trust infinitely to the beneficent necessity which shines through all laws. Human nature expresses itself in them as characteristically as in statues or songs or railroads. An abstract of the codes of nations would be a transcript of the common conscience. Governments have their origin in the moral identity of men. Reason for one is seen to be reason for another, and for every other. There's a middle measure which satisfies all parties, be they never so many or so resolute of their own. Every mind finds a sanction for his simplest claims and deeds in decisions of his own, and which he calls truth and holiness. In these decisions, all the citizens find a perfect agreement, and only in these, not in what is good to eat, good to wear, and use of time, or what amount of land or public aid. Each is entitled to claim. This truth and justice men presently endeavor to make application of the measuring of land. The apportionment of service, the protection of life and property. The first endeavors, no doubt, are very awkward. Yet absolute right is the first government, is the first governor, or every government in impure theocracy. The idea after which each community is aiming to make amend its law is the will of the wise man. The wise man it cannot find in nature, and it makes awkward but earnest efforts to secure his government by contrivance, as by causing the entire people to give their voices of every measure, or by a double choice to get the representation of the whole, or by a selection of the best citizens, or to secure the advantages of efficiency and internal peace by confiding the government to one, who may himself select his agents. All forms of government symbolize an immortal government, common to all dynasties, and independent of numbers, perfect where two men exist, perfect where there is only one man. Every man's nature is a sufficient advertisement to him of the character of his fellows. My right and my wrong is their right and their wrong, whilst I do what is fit for me and abstain from what is unfit. My neighbor and I shall often agree in our means and work together for a time to one end. But whenever I find my dominion over myself not sufficient for me, and undertake the direction of him also, I overstep the truth and come into false relations to him. I may have so much more skill or strength than he, that he cannot express adequately his sense of wrong. But it is a lie, and hurts like a lie both him and me. Love and nature cannot maintain the assumption. It must be executed by a partial lie, namely by force. The undertaking for another is the blunder which stands in colossal ugliness in the governments of the world. It is the same thing in numbers as in a peer, only not quite so intelligible. I can see well enough a great difference between my setting myself down to a self control and my going to make somebody else act after my views. But when a quarter of the human race assume to tell me what I must do, I may be too much disturbed by the circumstances to see so clearly the absurdity of that command. Therefore, all public ends look vague and quixotic besides private ones. For any laws but those which men make for themselves are laughable. If I put myself in the place of my child, and we stand in one thought and see that things are thus or thus, that perception is law for him and me. We are both there, both act. But without carrying him into the thought, I look over into his plot, and guessing how it is with him, ordain this or that. He will never obey me. This is the history of governments. One man does something which is to bind another. A man who cannot be acquainted with me taxes me, looking from afar at me ordains that a part of my labor shall go to this or that whimsical end, not as I, but as he happens to fancy. Behold the consequence of all debts men are least willing to pay to taxes. What is he? What I say? What a satire is this on government? Everywhere they think they get their money's worth, except for these. Hence, the less government we have, the better. The fewer laws and the less confided power. The antidote to this abuse of formal government is the influence of private character. The growth of the individual appearance of the principle to supersede the proxy. The appearance of the wise man, of whom the existing government is, it must be owned, but a shabby imitation. That which all things tend to educe, with freedom of cultivation, intercourse, revolutions, to go to form and deliver and character, that is the end of nature. To reach unto this coronation of her king, to educate the wise men, the state exists, and with the appearance of the wise man, the state expires. The appearance of character makes the state unnecessary. The wise man is the state. He needs no army, fort, or navy. He loves men too well. No bribe or feast or palace to draw friends to him. No vantage ground, no favorable circumstance. He needs no library, for he has not done thinking. No church, for he is a prophet. No statute book, for he has the lawgiver. No money, for he is value. No road, for he is at home, where he is. No experience, for the life of the Creator shoots through him and looks from his eyes. He has no personal friends, for he who has the spell to draw the prayer and piety of all men. Unto him needs not husband, and educate a few to share with him a select and poetic life. His relation to men is angelic. His memory is mirth to them. His presence, frankincense and flowers. We think our civilization near its meridian, but we are yet only the cock crowning and the morning star. In our barbarous society, the influence of character is in its infancy as a political power, as the rightful lord who is so tumble, who is to tumble all rulers from their chairs, its presence is hardly yet suspected. Malthus and Ricardo quite omit. The annual register is silent in the conversations. Lexicon it is not set down. The president's message, the queen's speech, I have not mentioned it, and yet it is never nothing. Every thought with genius and piety throw into the world, all 'tis the world. The gladiators in the lists of power feel through all the frocks of force and simulation. The presence of worth, I think, the very strife of trade and ambition is confession of this divinity. And successes in those fields are the poor men's. The fig leaf with which this shamed soul attempts to hide its nakedness, I find it like unwilling homage in all quarters. It is because we know how much is due from us that we are impatient to show some petty talent as a substitute for growth. We are haunted by a conscience of this right to grandeur character and are false to it. But each of us has some talent, can do somewhat useful or graceful, or formidable or amusing or lucrative, that we do as an apology to others and to ourselves for not reaching the mark of a good and equal life. But it does not satisfy us whilst we thrust it on the notice of our companions. It may throw dust in their eyes, but does not smooth our own brow or give us the tranquility of the strong when we walk abroad. We do penance as we go. Our talent is a sort of expiation. We are constrained to reflect on our splendid moment with a certain humiliation, somewhat too fine, and not as one act of many acts, a fair expression of our permanent energy. Most persons of ability meet in society with a kind of tacit appeal. Each seems to say, I am not all here. Senators and presidents have climbed so high with pain enough, not because they think the place specially agreeable, but as an apology for real worth, and to vindicate the manhood in our eyes. The conspicuous chair is their compensation to themselves for being a poor, cold, hard nature. They must do what they can, like one class, of forest animals. They have nothing but a prehensile tail. Climb they must or crawl. If a man found himself so rich natured that he could enter into strict relations with the best persons and make life serene around him by the dignity of sweetness of his behavior, could he afford to circumvent the favor of the caucus and the press, and covert relations so hollow and pompous as those of a politician? Surely nobody would be a charlatan who could afford to be sincere. The tendencies of the times favor the idea of self government and leave the individual, for all code, to the rewards and penalties of his own constitution, which work with more energy than we believe, whilst we depend on artificial restraints. The movement in this direction has been very marked in modern history. Much has been blind and discernible. Not the nature of the revolution, much has been blind and discernible, but the nature of the revolution is not affected by the vices of the revolters, for this is purely moral force. It was never adopted by any party in history, neither can be. It separates the individual from all party and unites him at the same to the race. It promises a recognition of higher rights than those of personal freedom or the security of property. A man has a right to be employed, to be trusted, to be loved, to be revered. The power of love as the basis of a state has never been tried. We must not imagine that all things are lapsing into confusion. If every tender Protestant be not compelled to bear his parts in creation in certain social conventions, nor doubt that roads can be built, letters carried, and the fruit of labor secured. The government of force is at an end. Are our methods now so excellent that all competition is hopeless? Could not a nation of friends even devise better ways? On the other hand, let not the most conservative and timid fear anything from a premature surrender of the bayonet and the system of force. For according to the order of nature, which is quite superior to our will, it stands thus: there will always be a government of force, where men are selfish. And when they are pure enough to abjure the code of force, they'll be wise enough to see how these public ends of the post office, of the highway, of commerce, and exchange of property, of museums and libraries, of institutions of art and science can be answered. We live in a very low state of the world, and pay unwilling tribute to governments founded on force. There is not among the most religious and instructed men of the most religious and civil nations a reliance on the moral sentiment and a sufficient belief in the unity of things to persuade them that society can be maintained without artificial restraints, as well as the solar system, or that the private citizen might be reasonable and a good neighbor without the hint of a jail or a confiscation. What is strange too, there never was in any man sufficient faith and the power of rectitude to inspire him with the broad design of renovating the state on the principle of right and love. All those who have pretended this design have been partial reformers and have admitted in some manner the supremacy of a bad state. I do not call to mind a single human being who has steadily denied the authority of the laws on the simple ground of his own moral nature. Such designs, full of genius and full of faith as they are not entrained except avowedly as ear pictures. If the individual who inhibits them dare to think them practicable, he disgusts scholars and churchmen, and men of talent and women of superior sentiments cannot hide their contempt. Not the less does nature continue to fill the heart of youth with suggestions of this enthusiasm. And there are now men, if indeed I can speak in the plural number more exactly, I will say, I have just been conversing with one man to whom no weight of adverse experience will make it for a movement appear impossible, and thousands of human beings might exercise towards each other the grandest and simplest sentiments, as well as a knot of friends or a pair of lovers. We are now finished this book on politics, page 4, 3, 5, nominalist and realist. In countless upward striving waves, the moon drawn tide waves strives. In thousand far transplanted grafts, the, the parent fruit survives. So, in the newborn millions, the perfect Adam lives. Not less are summer mornings dear to every child they wake, and each with novel life has his sphere fills for his proper sake. I cannot often enough say that a man is only a relative and representative nature. Each is a hint of the truth, but far enough from being that truth which yet he quite newly and inevitably suggests to us. If I seek it in him, I shall not find it. Could any man conduct into me the pure stream of that which he pretends to be? Long afterwards I find that quality elsewhere which he promised me. The genius of the Platonists is intoxicating to the student, yet how few particulars of it can I detach from all their books. The man momentarily stands for the thought, but will not bear examination. And a society of men will curiously represent well enough a certain quality and culture. For example, chivalry or beauty of manners. But separate them, and there is no gentleman and no lady in the group. The least hint sets us on the pursuit of a character which no man realizes. We have such exorbitant eyes that on seeing the smallest arc, we complete the curve, and when the curtain is lifted from the diagram which it seemed to veil, we are vexed to find that no more was drawn than just that fragment of an arc which we first beheld. We are greatly too liberal in our construction of each other's faculty and promise. Exactly what the parties have already done, they shall do again. But that which we inferred from their nature and inception, they will not do. That is in nature, but not in them. That happens in the world, which we often witness in public debate. Each of the speakers expresses himself imperfectly. No one of them hears much that another says. Such is the preoccupation of mind of each, and the audience, who have only to hear and not to speak, judge very wisely and superiorly how wrong-headed and unskillful is each of the debates to his own affair. Great men or men of great gifts you shall easily find, but symmetrical men never. When I meet a pure intellectual force or a generosity of affection, I believe, here then is man, and am presently mortified by the discovery that this individual is no more available to his own or to general ends than his companions, because the power which drew my respect is not supported by the total symphony of his talents. All persons exist. All persons exist to society by some shining trait of beauty or utility which they have. We borrow the proportions of the man from that one fine feature and finish the portrait symmetrically, which is false, for the rest of his body is small or deformed. I observe a person who makes a good public appearance, and conclude, thence the perfection of his private character, on which this is based. But he has no private character. He is a graceful cloak or lay figure for holidays. All our poets, heroes, and saints fall utterly in some one or many paths to satisfy our ideas. Fail to draw our spontaneous interest. Our spontaneous interest. And so leave us without any hope of realization. But in our own future, our exaggeration of all fine characters arises from the fact that we identify each in turn with the soul. But there are no such men as we fable. No Jesus, no Pericles, no Caesar, nor Angelo, no Washington, such as we have made. We consecrate a great deal of nonsense because it was allowed by great men. There's none without his foible. I believe that if an angel should come to chant the chorus of the moral law, he would eat too much gingerbread or take liberties with private letters, or do some precious atrocity. It is bad enough that our geniuses cannot do anything useful, but it is worse that no man is fit for society who has fine traits. He is admired at a distance, but he cannot come near without aspiring a cripple. The men of fine parts protect themselves by solitude, or by courtesy, or by satire, or by an acid worldly manner, each concealing, as he best can, his incapacity for useful association, but they want either love or self-reliance. Our native love of reality joins with this experience to teach us a little reserve and to dissuade a too sudden surrender to the brilliant qualities of persons. Young people admire talents or particular excellences. As we grow older, we value total powers and effects as impression, the quality, the spirit of men and things. The genius is all. The man, it is his system. We do not try a solitary word or act, but his habit. The acts which you praise, I praise not, since they are departures from his faith, and are mere compliances. The magnetism which arranges tribes and races is in one polarity, is alone to be respected. Let me repeat that. The magnetism which arranges tribes and races in one polarity is alone to be respected. The men are steel fillings. Yet we unjustly select a particle and say, "Oh, steel filling number one. What heart drawings I feel to thee, what prodigious virtues are these of thine? How constitutional to thee, and incommunicable. Whilst we speak, the lodestone is withdrawn. Down falls our filling in a heap with the rest, and we continue our mummery to the wretched shaving. Let us go for universals, for the magnetism, not the needles. Human life and its persons are poor empirical pretensions. A personal influence is an ignis fatuus. If they say it is great, it is great. If they say it is small, it is small. You see it, and you see it not by turns. It borrows all its size from the momentary estimation of the speakers. The will of the wisp vanishes if you go too near. vanishes if you go too far, and only blazes at one angle. Who can tell if Washington be a great man or no? Who can tell if Franklin be? Yes, or any of the 12 or fix or three great gods of fame. And they too loom and fade before the eternal. We are amphibious creatures, weapon for two elements, having two sets of faculties, the particular and the Catholic. We adjust our instrument for general observation and sweep the heavens as easily as we pick out a single figure in the terrestrial landscape. We are practically skillful in detecting elements for which we have no place in our theory and no name. Thus, we are very sensible of the atmospheric influence in men and in bodies of men, not accounted for in the arithmetical addition of all their measurable properties. There is a genius of a nation which is not to be found in the numerical citizens, but which characterizes the society. England's strong, punctual, practical, well spoken. England I should not find if I should go to the island to seek it. In the parliament, in the playhouse, at dinner tables, I might see a great number of rich, ignorant, book read, conventional, proud men, many old women, and not anywhere the Englishman who made the good speeches, combined the accurate engines, and did the bold and nervous deeds. It is even worse in America, where from the intellectual quickness of the race, the genius of the country is more splendid in its promise and more slight in its performance. Webster cannot do the work of Webster. We conceive distinctively enough the French, the Spanish, the German genius, and it is not the less real. Perhaps we should not meet in either of those nations a single individual who corresponded with the type. We infer the spirit of the nation in great measure from the language, which is a sort of monument to which each forcible individual in a course of many hundred years has contributed a stone, and universally, a good example of the social force is the veracity of language, which cannot be debauched. In any controversy concerning morals, an appeal may be made with safety to the sentiments of the language of the people, which the language of the people expresses. Proverbs, words and grammar inflections convey the public sense with more purity and precision than the wisest individual. And the famous dispute with the nominalists, the realists, had a good deal of reason. General ideas are essences, they are our gods. They round and ennoble the most partial and sordid way of living. Our proclivity, the details, cannot quite degrade our life and divest it of poetry. The day laborer is reckoned as standing at the foot of the social scale, yet he is saturated with the laws of the world. His measures are the hours, morning and night, solstice and equinox, geometry, astronomy, and all the lovely accents of nature play through his mind. Money, which represents the prose of life, and which is hardly spoken of in parlors without an apology, is, in its effects and laws, as beautiful as roses. Property keeps the accounts of the world, and is always moral. The property will be found with the labor, the wisdom, and the virtue have been in nations, in classes, and the whole lifetime considered, with the compensations in the individual also. How rise the world, how wise the world appears when the laws and usages of nations are largely detailed, and the completeness of the municipal system is considered. Nothing is left out. If you go into the markets and the custom houses, the insurers and notaries, offices, offices of sealers, of weights and measures, of inspection of provisions, it will appear as if one man had made it all. Wherever you go, a wit like your own has been a wit like your own has been before you and has realized its thoughts. The Eleusinian mysteries, the Egyptian architecture, the Indian astronomy, the Greek sculpture show that there always were seeing and knowing men in the planet. The world is full of Masonic ties, the guilds of secret, and public legions of honor. That of scholars, for example, and that of gentlemen, fraternizing with the upper class of every country and every culture. I am very much struck in literature by the appearance that one person wrote all the books, as if the editor of a journal planted his body of reporters in different parts of the field of action, and relieved some by others from time to time. But there's such equality and identity both of judgment and point of view in the narrative that is plainly the work of one all-seeing, all-bearing, all-hearing gentleman. Gentlemen, I looked into Pope's Odyssey yesterday. It is as correct and elegant after our canon today as if were newly written. The modernness of all good books seem to give me an assistance as wide as man. What is well done, I feel as if I did. What is all ill done, I reckon not of. Shakespeare passages of passion, for example, Lear and Hamlet are the very dialect of the present year. I'm faithful again to the whole over the members in my use of books. I find the most pleasure in reading a book in a manner least flattering to the author. I read Proclus and sometimes Plato, or I read Proclus and sometimes Plato, as I might read a dictionary for a mechanical help to the fancy and the imagination. I read for the lustres, as if one should use a fine picture and a chromatic experiment for its rich colors. 'Tis not Proclus, but a piece of nature and fate that I explore. It is a greater joy to see the author than himself. A high pleasure of the same kind I found lately at a concert where I went to hear Handel's Messiah. As the master overpowered the littleness and the incapableness of his performers and made them conductors of his electricity, so it was easy to observe what efforts nature was making through so many hoarse, wooden, and imperfect persons to produce beautiful voices, fluid and soul guided men and women. The genius of nature was paramount at the oratorio. This preference of the genius parts is a secret of that deification of art, which is found in all superior minds. Art in the artist, in proportion or a habitual respect to the whole, by an eye loving beauty in details, and the wonder and charm of it is the sanity and insanity which it denotes. Proportion is almost impossible to human beings. There is no one who does not exaggerate. In conversation, men are encumbered with personality and talk too much. In modern sculpture, picture, and poetry, the beauty is miscellaneous. Artist works here and there, and at all points adding and adding instead of unfolding the units of his thoughts. Beautiful details we must have. We're no artists, but they must by means and never other. I must not lose sight for a moment of the purpose. Lively boys write to their ear and eye, and the cool reader finds nothing but sweet jingles in it. When they grow older, they respect the argument. We obey the same intellectual integrity when we study in exceptions the law of the world. Anomalous facts, as in never quite absolute rumors of magic and demonology, and the new allegations of phrenologists and neurologists, or of ideal use. They are good indications. Homeopathy is insignificant as an art of healing, but of great value as criticism on the hygeia or medical practice of the time. So with mesmerism, Swedenborgism, Fourierism, and the millennial church, they are poor pretensions enough, but good criticism on the science, philosophy, and preaching of the day. For these abnormal insights of the depths ought to be normal, and things, of course. All things show us that on every side we are very near to the best. It seems not worthwhile to execute with too much pains some intellectual or aesthetical or civil feat, when precisely the dream will scatter, and we shall burst into universal power. The reason of idleness and of crime is in the deferring of our hopes. Whilst we are waiting, we beguile the time with jokes, with sleep, with eating, and with crimes. Thus we settle it in our cool libraries, that all the agents with which we deal are subalterns, which we can well afford to let pass. And life will be simpler when we live at the center and flout the surfaces. I wish to speak with all respect of persons, but sometimes I must pinch myself to keep awake and preserve the due decorum. They melt so fast into each other that they are like grass and trees, and it needs an effort to treat them as individuals. Though the uninspired man certainly finds persons a conveniency in household matters, the divine man does not respect them. He seeks them as a rack of clouds or a fleet of ripples, which the wind drives over the surface of the wind. But this is flat rebellion. Nature will not be Buddhist. She resents generalizing and insults the philosopher in every moment with a million of fresh particulars. It is all idle talking. As much as man is a whole, so is he also part. And it were partial not to see it. When you say in your pompous distribution, only this distributes you. When you say in your pompous distribution, what you say in your pompous distribution only distributes you into your class and section. You have not got rid of parts by denying them, but are the more parts. You are one thing, but nature is one thing, and the other thing in the same moment. She will not remain orbed in a thought, but rushes into persons, and when each person, inflamed to a hurry of personality, would conquer all things to his poor crotchet, she raises up against him another person, and by many persons incarnates again a sort of whole. She will have all. Nick Button cannot play all the parts. Rook it how he may. There will be somebody else, and and the world will be round. Everything must have its flower effort, at the beautiful course or refiner according to its stuff. They relieve and recommend each other, and the sanity of society is a balance of 1,000 insanities. She punishes abstractionless and will only forgive an induction which is rare and casual. We like to come we like to come to a height of land and see the landscape, just as we value a general remark in conversation. But it is not the intention of nature that we should live by general views. We fetch fire and water, run about all day among the shops and markets, and get our clothes and shoes made and mended, and are the victims of these details. And once in a fortnight we arrive perhaps at a rational moment. If we were not this infatuated, if we saw the real from hour to hour, we should not be here to write and to read, but should have been burnt, a frozen, or frozen long ago. She would never get anything done if she suffered. Admirable creatures and universal geniuses. She loves better a wheelwright who dreams all night of wheels, and a groom who is part of his horse, for she is full of work. And there are her hands, as a frugal farmer takes care of takes care that his cattle shall eat down the rowan, and swine shall the waste of his house, and poultry shall pick the crumbs. So our economical mother, let me just repeat that. As a frugal farmer takes care that his cattle shall eat down the rowan, and swine shall eat the waste of his house, and poultry shall pick the crumbs, so our economical mother dispatches a new genius and habit of mind into every distinct condition of existence. Plants our eye wherever a new ray of light can fall, and gathering up into some man every property in the universe, establishes thousandfold occult mutual attractions among her offspring, that all this wash and waste of power may be imparted and exchanged. Great dangers undoubtedly accrue from this incarnation and distribution of the Godhead, and hence nature has her maligners, as if she were Cursey, Kikri, and Alfonso. The Castile fancied he could have given useful advice, but she does not go unprovided. She has hellebore at the bottom of the cup. Solitude would ripen a plentiful cup of deposits. The recluse thinks of men as having his manner, or as not having his manner, and as having degrees of it more or less. But when he comes into a public assembly, he sees that men have very different manners from his own, and in their way, admirable. In his childhood and youth, he has had many checks and censures, and thinks modestly enough of his own endowment. But afterwards he comes to unfold it in propitious circumstance. It seems the only talent. He is delighted with his success, and accounts himself already the fellow of the great. But he goes into a mob, into a banking house, into a mechanic shop, into a mill, into a into a laboratory, into a ship, into a camp, and in each new place he is no better than an idiot. Other talents take place and rule the hour. The rotation which whirls every leaf and pebble to the meridian reaches to every gift of man. And we all take turns at the top. For nature, who abhors mannerisms, mannerism has set her heart on breaking up all styles and tricks, and it is so much easier to do what has done before than to do a new thing. That there is a perpetual tendency to set a mode in every conversation, even the highest. There's a certain trick which may be soon learned by an acute person, and then that particular style continued indefinitely. Each man, too, is a tyrant in tendency, because he would impose his ideas on others, and their trick is a natural defense. Jesus would absorb the race, but Tom Paine, and the coarsest blasphemer, helps humanity by resisting this exuberance of power. Hence the immense benefit of party in politics, as it reveals faults of character in a chief. Which intellectual, just repeat that, hence the immense benefit of party in politics, as it reveals faults of character in a chief, which intellectual faults of persons with ordinary opportunity and not hurled into aphelion by hatred could not have seen. Since we are all too so stupid, what benefits that there should be two stupidities? It is like the brute advantage so essential to astronomy of having the diameter of the Earth's orbit for a base of its triangles. Democracy is morose and runs to anarchy, but the state and the schools of its indispensable. But in the state and in the schools, it is indispensable to resist the consolidation of all men into a few men. If John was perfect, why are you and I alive? As long as any man exists, there is some need of him. Let him fight for his own. A new poet has appeared, a new character approached us. Why should we refuse to eat bread until we have found his regiment and section in our old army files? Why not a new man? Here is a new enterprise of Brook Farm, of Scanatulus, of Northampton. Why so impatient to baptize them Essence, or Port Royalists, or Shakers, or by any known and effort name? Let it be a new way of living. Why have only 2 or 3 ways of life, and not thousands? Every man is wanted, and no man is wanted much. We came this time for condiments, not for corn. We want the great genius only for joy, for 1 star more in our constellation, for 1 tree more in our grove. But he thinks we wish to belong to him, as he wishes to occupy us. He greatly mistakes us. I think I have done well if I have acquired a new word from a good author, and my business with him is to find my own, though it were only to melt him down into an epithet or an image for daily use. Into paint, quote, into paint will I grind thee, my bridge, end quote. To embroil confusion and make it impossible to arrive at any general statement, when we have insisted on the imperfection of individuals, our affections and our experience urge that every individual is entitled to honor, and a very generous treatment is sure to be repaid. A recluse sees only 2 or 3 persons and allows them all their room. they spread themselves at large. The statesman looks at many and compares the few habitually with others, and these look less. Yet are they not entitled to his generosity of reception? And is not munificence the means of insight? For thought gamesters say that the cards beat all the players, though they were never so skillful. Yet in the contest we are now considering, the players are also the game, and share the power of the cards. If you criticize a fine genius, the odds are that you are out of your reckoning. Instead of the poet, are censoring your own caricature of him. For there is somewhat spheral and infinite in every man, especially in every genius, which, if you can come very near him, sports with all your limitations. For rightly every man is a channel through which heaven floweth, and whilst I fancied I was criticizing him, I was censoring, or rather terminating my own soul. After taxing golf as a carrier, artificial, unbel- unbelieving, worldly, I took up this book of Helena and found them an Indian of the wilderness, a piece of pure nature, like an apple or an oak, large as morning or night, and virtuous as briar rose. But care is taken that the whole tune shall be played. If we were not kept among surfaces, everything would be large and universal. Now the excluded attributes burst in on us with the more brightness. They have been excluded. Quote, you turn now, my turn next. End quote. Is the rule of the game. The universality being hindered in its primary form comes in secondary form of all sides. The points come in succession to the meridian, and by the speed of rotation, a new whole is formed. Nature keeps herself whole, and her representations complete. In the experience of each mind, she suffers no seat to be vacant in her college. It is a secret of the world that all things subsistent do not die, but only retire a little from sight and afterwards return again. Whatever does not concern us is concealed from us. As soon as a person is no longer related to our present well-being, he is concealed or dies, as we say. Really, all things and persons are related to us. According to our nature, they act on us not at once, but in succession, and we are made aware of their presence one at a time. All persons, all things which we have known are here present, and many more than we see. The world is full. As the ancients said, the world is a plenum, or solid. And if we saw all things that really surrounded us, we should be imprisoned and unable to move. For though nothing is impossible to the soul, for though nothing is impassable to the soul, impassable, not impossible, though nothing is impassable to the soul, for all things are pervious to it. And like highways, yet this is only whilst the soul does not see them. As soon as the soul sees any object, it stops before the object. Therefore, the divine providence, which keeps the universe open in every direction to the soul, conceals all the furniture and all the persons that do not concern a particular soul from the senses of that individual. Through solidest eternal things, the man finds his road as if they did not subsist, and does not once suspect their being. Soon as he needs a new object, suddenly he beholds it and no longer attempts to pass through it, but takes another way. When he has exhausted for the time the nourishment to be drawn from any one person or thing, that object is withdrawn from his observation, and though still in his immediate neighborhood, he does not suspect its presence. Let me repeat that. When he has exhausted for the time the nourishment to be drawn from any one person or thing, that object is withdrawn from his observation, and though still in his immediate neighborhood, he does not suspect its presence. Nothing is said. Men feign themselves dead and endure mock funerals and mournful obituaries. And there they stand, looking out of the window, sound and well. In some new and strange disguise, Jesus is not dead. He is very well alive. Nor John, nor Paul, nor Mahomet, nor Aristotle. At times we believe we have seen them all, and could easily tell the names under which they go. If we cannot make voluntary and conscious steps in the admirable science of universals, let us see the parts wisely and infer the genius of nature from the best particulars with a becoming charity. What is best in each kind is an index of what should be the average of that thing. Love shows me the opulence of nature by disclosing to me and my friend a hidden wealth, and I infer an equal depth of good in every other direction. It is commonly said by farmers that a good pear of apple it is commonly said by farmers that a good pear or apple costs no more time or pains to rear than a poor one. So I would have no work of art, no speech or action or thought or friend, but the best. The end and the means, the gamester and the game. Life is made up of intermixture and reaction of these two amicable powers, whose marriage appears beforehand monstrous, as each denies and tends to abolish the other. We must reconcile the contradictions as we can, but the discord and the concord introduce wild absurdities to our thinking and speech. No sentence will hold the whole truth, and the only way in which we can be just is by giving ourselves the lie. Speech is better than silence. Silence is better than speech. All things are in contact. Every atom has a sphere of repulsion. Things are and are not at the same time, and the like. All the universe over, there's but one thing. The old two-face, created creature, mind matter, right wrong, of which any proposition may be affirmed or denied. Very fitly, therefore, I assert that every man is a partialist, and that nature secures him an instrument by self-conceit, preventing the tendencies to religion and science, and now further assert that each man's genius being needy and affectionately explored, he is justified in his individuality, as his nature is found to be immense. And now I add that every man is universalist also, and as our earth, whilst it spins on its own axis, spins all the time around the sun through the celestial spaces, so the least of its rational children, the most dedicated to his private affair, works out, though as it were under a disguise, the universal problem. We fancy men are individuals, so are pumpkins, but every pumpkin in the field goes through every point of pumpkin history. The rabid Democrat, as soon as he is senator and rich man, has ripened beyond possibility of sincere radicalism. And unless he can resist the sun, he must be conservative the remainder of his days. Lord Eldon, in his old age, Lord Eldon said in his old age that, quote, if he were to begin life again, he would be damned, but he'd begin as an agitator, end quote. We hide the universality if we can, but it appears at all points we are ungrateful as children. There's nothing we cherish and strive to draw to us, but in some hour we turn and rend it. We keep a running fire of sarcasm or ignorance and the life of the senses. Then goes by, perchance, perchance, a fair girl, a piece of life, gay and happy, and making the commonest offices beautiful by the energy and heart with which she does them. And seeing this, we admire and love her and say, lo, a genuine creature of fair earth, not dissipated or too early ripened by books, philosophy, religion, society, or care, insinuating a treachery and contempt for all we had so long loved and wrought in ourselves and others. If we could have any security against moods, if the profoundest prophet could be holding to his words, and the hero who is ready to sell all and join the crusade could have any certificate that tomorrow his prophet shall not unsay his testimony, but the truth sits veiled there on the bench and never interposes an adamantine syllable. And the most sincere and revolutionary doctrine, put as if the ark of God were carried forward some furlongs and planted there for the succor of the world, shall in a few weeks be coldly set aside by the same speaker as morbid. Quote, I thought I was right, but I was not. End quote. And the same immeasurable credulity demanded for new audacities, or audacities for that matter. We were not if we were not of all opinions, if we did not in any moment shift on the platform on which we stand and look and speak from another, if there could be any regulation, any 1 hour rule that a man should never leave his point of view without sound of trumpet, I'm always insincere, as always knowing there are other moods. How sincere and confidential we can be, saying all that lies in the mind, and yet go away feeling that all is yet unsaid, from the incapacity of the parties to know each other. Although they use the same words, my companion assumes to know my mood, habit of thought, and we go on from explanation to explanation until all is said which words can, and we leave matters just as they were at first, because of that vicious assumption. It is that every man believes every other to be an incurable partialist, and himself a universalist, I talked yesterday with a pair of philosophers. I endeavored to show my good men that I liked everything by turns and nothing long, that I loved the center, but doted on the superficies, that I loved men. If men seemed to me mice and rats, that I revered saints, but woke up glad that the old pagan world stood its ground and died hard, and I was glad of men of every gift and nobility, but would not live in their arms. Could they but once understand that I loved to know that they existed, and hardly wished them Godspeed, yet out of my poverty of life and thought, had no word or welcome for them when they came to see me, and could well consent to their living in Oregon for my claim I felt on them would be a great satisfaction. I think that is the end of this book called Politics. So we just finished this book called Politics, page 448. I just wanted to repeat again the last few sentences. Could they but once understand that I loved to know that they existed, and heartily wish them Godspeed, yet out of my poverty of life and thought, had no word or welcome for them when they came to see me, and could well consent to their living in Oregon for any claim I felt on them it would be a great satisfaction. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, that is apparently the end of this book. And this book, the next book I'm going to be reading is The New England Reformers. It won't be on this video. It's going to be on the next one. So that's page 449, New England Reformers. Lecture read before the Society in Armory Hall on Sunday, March 3rd, 1844. That's a long time ago, before I was born. Please do feel free to leave your comments, your thoughts, your feedback, your insights. What do you think about this book I've been reading? What is your opinion about the ideas I'm sharing through the books? Yeah, it is actually a couple of books. And what do you think about my reading style? Does it resonate with you? And what of the video? I want to know what you think of the video, if it's good quality or not. Please feel free to share your feedback, your comments, your insights, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to read with me. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it's not too late. You can subscribe now. It's much appreciated. By subscribing, my message goes out. My messages, for that matter, go out further. So it's a kind act, which doesn't really cost anything. I look forward to hearing from you. And by all means, do press the like or dislike button. It is much appreciated. Have a beautiful day going forward. You are kind. You are great. You're a beacon of hope and light in this world. Keep on smiling. You're beautiful.